So welcome welcome to the class, and so hope you hear my voice. In this class, basically we are going to discuss about what we have learned so far. So do you have any doubts to clarify? You can ask it to me, because before we get into the next part, because the next level, that means we are going to create a mobile robot. That means the robot will be moving by using our mobile phone, right? So that will be a very interesting part. Before we get move to that one, we have to prepare it. So if you have any doubts to clarify with me, you can ask. So do you have any doubts? Do you have any doubts to clarify? Up to now, we have learned uh, how to connect the electronic components and the Arduino, right? So basically, we learned about how to connect the sensor and how to connect the actuators. So, do you have any doubts or difficulties while handling those components or connecting those things? Do you have anything unclear about? You can ask me. Like if you don't have any doubts, we can get move to the class. So today we are going to learn. Today we are going to learn about the mobile robot. Right? So today we are going to learn how to create mobile robots. Right? So these are very simple things, but we have to learn something. Right? So as an example, I can show it to you. Arduino mobile robot. So this is the one we are going to make, right? So these are the ones. So this is basically the robot that can be controlled by our Bluetooth, which means we can control this by using our smartphones, right? So these are very simple things to create, but when you are doing practically, that will be that may be very hard, right? So we have to learn the theory parts today, and tomorrow we learn about how to assemble those things, right? So this is the component. This is the thing we are going to make, right? In our robotics class, in future upcoming classes, this is what we are going to make, right? So basically, we have to understand about how to control the system and how to control the circuits, right? For that, we have to know about motor controller, right? So here I have a motor controller called L298N, right? So this is the motor control, right? So you can see that uh, basically this is the shape, right? So this is the actual shape. So this is the wiring diagram of it, right? So I can also show it to you if you want to see that. Right? So in here I shared the video. This is the motor control. So this is
This is
the
the
motor
motor
control
control
that
that I
I'm
am
showing
showing to
you here.
here.
If you
If you
have
have
one
one
such a
such
one,
a one,
you
you
can
can
see this.
see this.
You can
You can
obtain this
obtain
and
this
see
and
this.
see this.
Right. So we'll analyze about how this controls, right? So we have two motors, right? So here this is the the diagram of it, simply the diagram of it, right? So we have two motors, right? So here, but here we don't have the motor control, right? In circuit design, our Tinkercad software, we don't have the component, right? So, but we have the motors, right? So if you type motor, and the motor will come here, hobby GA motor. This is the motor that we are going to use in our classes, right? So this is the motor. This motor is GA. This is normally a DC motor, right? So DC motor means we have two terminals, negative terminal and the positive terminal, right? So if you wire this from a positive to negative terminal, that means the motor will turn clockwise. That means rotating on clockwise, right? So on the other hand, if you wire this motor on the other side, right, that means then you obtain the battery's negative terminal to the positive terminal and positive terminal to the motor's negative terminal. That means you're connecting other way around. That means the motor will turn anti-clockwise, right? So this is how the motor will rotate. So that means, so you can think that how the system will work. Right? So by giving the electricity, how we can achieve the motion? You can just think about this motor, right? We can create by supplying electrical current, the motor will rotate, right? So while the motor is rotating, we can attach a wheel here, right? So I have also, I can show you to, so this is the, so are you hearing? Can you see this? This is the motor, right? So this is the chassis kit, right? Robotic car chassis, mini car chassis kit. You can obtain it from your nearby electronic shop and obtain it here. This one. So with this one, you can get two motors, right? So this motor and this motor you will get, and some arranging components you will get, right? So you have to obtain those components and get it. And so this one you have to buy it externally. And so this one you have to buy it externally. This will not be included in this pack, right? So we have to obtain it, and you have to connect this motor like this. I have connected. So these components will be available within this kit, right? So we have to obtain this component, and we can grab a motor and place it here by screwing this one. So these are very simple things you can create. It's like playing games, right? So you can connect the motor like this, right? So on the other side, we connect another motor on this side, right? So this is how we connect the motors, right? So here uh, we have holes, right? So we have holes to connect it. So this is very simple, right? So if you have any difficulties while connecting this, you can ask me. So basically, these things will be very easy to understand for you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to conduct the difficult part, right? So this is very easy, basic things. You can connect this very easily. If you have any doubt, you can ask it to me. It's not a problem. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to carry out the difficult part for you, right? So I'm going to wiring and the theory behind it. So those are the parts that I'm going to carry, right? So but you can connect these components very easily. Right? So I have a question. So when will we do the Bluetooth? Yeah, of course, we will learn in upcoming lectures, right? So in upcoming parts, those are somewhat advanced things, but we will learn in these courses, right? In this course, the next month, then upcoming classes, we will learn the Bluetooth controls, and even if you are really interested, I can show you to how to control by using your voice, right? So as an example, if I obtain a my mobile, and I say that turn off all the lights. That means the lights will be turned off by my voice. So those parts also can be covered if you are really interested, right? So you have to answer my questions. You have to work on these things. So those are the things, right? Now this is the way you connect these motors, right? So after you connect that the motor, there will be a wheel available. There are two available, two wheels available. So you can obtain those two wheels and place it here, right? Some chassis, right? Some chassis are coming with two wheels. Some chassis are coming with four wheels, right? So that means you have to connect four motors here, here, and here, right? So four motors you can connect here. So now let's analyze about the wiring diagrams and all the stuffs. So do you have any doubts? You can ask me, right? Right. So this is the motor. So you can obtain an Arduino also. You can obtain the Arduino here also. You can obtain. So I'm going to explain it in the diagram. So I have obtained the two motors, and I'm going to insert an Arduino here. I can grab and drag and drop the Arduino here. Right. So I have two motors. These motors are connected to the chassis, right? The car chassis. The motors are connected with that, right? So we have Arduino also, right? So then after we have to have the motor controller, right? But we don't have the motor controller in this Tinkercad software, right? So that means we have to practice these things manually, right? So I will explain it to you very understanding manner. So no, don't worry about. So we have Arduino, right? So we have Arduino. Why do we have to use the motor controller additionally? Can anyone know that?
To control the motor.
Yeah, but what happen if we can also control the motor by using Arduino? Why do we specifically have to use motor control? That means I told you this one, LN L298N. Why do we have to use this particular motor control for our special requirement? Why? Of course, that is the answer. You told me in order to control the motor, we have to use this one. Right? So I'm asking you, why don't we use Arduino directly to control the motor? That is what I'm asking. So can anyone know the answer? Tell me. Right? So this is simple, right? So because here in this diagram you can see that this Arduino, right? I showed the Arduino what it will look like. So this Arduino can control only 3 to 5 voltages. That means it will allow control the components by providing signals, right? So electrical signals. Those electrical signals are in small amount. That means we can obtain a small current from Arduino, right? So we can obtain large current that can drive the motors, right? So if you directly we know that in Arduino we can obtain 5 voltage current. We can obtain 5 voltage. We can obtain 5 voltage and give that power to the motor, right? So what happens if you provide the 5 voltage to this motor? This motor will not going to rotate. Of course, it will rotate, but not as much as we need, right? Because the motors are designed for 12 voltage, right? So this motor, particularly, this motor is designed for 12 voltage. So what happens if we provide a 5 voltage to this one? It will rotate slowly. That means we can't control our robot as a speed as we want. So that is the problem. So for that, we are going to use additional motor controller, right? So you can see that this is the 9-volt battery. If you have the 9-volt battery, you can use it, but I'm highly recommending you to uh, use rechargeable battery, right? So rechargeable battery means I can show you to you rechargeable batteries. So these are the rechargeable batteries. The most probably you can get it 3.7 voltage, 2 ampere, 3.7 voltage, 2 ampere. Right? So this is the battery. So of course it has some high value. It has a 800 milliamp, right? So that means zero point 0.8 ampere, right? So we can obtain the higher current batteries, right? So that means it will work. Most probably, I told you to obtain 2 ampere batteries, right? So here you can see that here this rated at 2.9 watt hour, right? That means 800 milliamp. You can see that obtain a battery, and in the battery they will be indicating that 2 ampere. That means 2000 milliah, mAh, right? So we have to obtain that battery, and we can connect that. So, so if you look at closely, right? So if you look at closely, so I can obtain a different. So this may be showing clearly, right? So this is the motor controller, right? So everything will be the motor will be controlled by using this motor. So I have a question. So you can ask me directly by turning on your mic, right? So I can't understand. We need to connect one or two. What means one or two motors? Are you asking? So you can ask me questions directly, right? So I'm explaining here while you can cross talk, right? So these are the components that we have to connect. This is the, yeah, batteries. Yeah, batteries, right? So that's a good question. How many batteries do we have to connect? We have to have, right? So the motors are running with 12 voltage, right? So the motor can run from, it can run 9 volt, 12 volt, of course, up to 15 volt the motor can run, right? So how many batteries do we have? I told you that we have to obtain a 12 voltage, right? So that means we have to have three batteries, right? 3.7. If you are using 3.7 voltage battery, we have to have three batteries, right? So that means we can get nearly by 11 voltages, right? So 11, yeah, 11 voltages. So if you someone may use different batteries, right? That means uh, in also in the market it also available 12 voltage battery also. So that if you are using 12 voltage, you can directly connect the 12 voltage battery, one single battery. That means the battery pack, right? So you can obtain this battery, right? So here I can show you uh, 12 voltage battery rechargeable. Here, this one, this show this, right? So if you look at closely, the batteries are arrayed together, right? That means there may be 3 or 6 batteries, right? So they are, you know that how to increase the voltage, right? By connecting seriously, we can increase the voltage, right? So that may be they have already inbuilt the batteries to provide us directly 12 voltages, right? So these things you can obtain. So you have to be aware about the current, how much the current we obtain. Right? So basically 2 ampere current is enough, right? So this one is a higher ampere current, 4.4 ampere. You can obtain 2 ampere current, or maybe you can obtain this one, 3 ampere current, right? So 12 voltage, 3 ampere current, right? So you can obtain this, right? So after you have obtained the battery, right, you have to give power up this one. So I told you in the first lecture, each and every component it has to be powered up, right? So we have to give the power to this one also, right? So we can obtain a battery here, and we can connect it to this terminal. That means the 12 voltage to the driver, motor driver, and the ground terminal to the ground. That means this component is powered up, right? So after it is powered up, you can see there may be, right? So there may be some LEDs turned on, right? So you can see that hopefully maybe here, right? Right. After you have powered up, you can operate this one, right? So for that, so this power, it is enough. We if we connect the battery to the motor controller to 12 voltage and the ground, that may be enough, right? So the step two, right? So basically this is the final step. After you connected all the components, then you have to give the power. That is the way we are doing. Right? I'm explaining to you simply, right? Right. So if we give the 12 voltage power, right, the power will be given for the motors. Right? So for that, in order to distribute our voltages, we have to connect this one to the one motors, whatever the pin, positive or negative, as you wish. Right? Another pin to the negative terminal of the motor. Right? So in the motor, right? So right, in this motor, we have two terminals. Ne? Here, positive terminal. These two positive and negative terminals should be connected to the this one, right? So this one motor should be connected to one side of the L298N motor controller, and also similarly, we can connect the negative terminal to whatever, right? Negative to negative or positive to negative, whatever. As you wish, you can connect the another motor to this side of the pin, right? So we have to obtain this one and this one should be connected to the motor, maybe positive or negative according to the direction that you want. Right? So this is how we connect, right? The motors, right? So after you have connected the motors, will you expect that the motors will be running? Will the motors be running? No, the motors will not going to run because we didn't give the power. That means we didn't uh, say the motor to rotate. We of course we have connected the motor, but we didn't uh, give the signals to the motor. So if we give only the signals to to those motors, the motors will be running. Right. For that we have these area pins. Right. So for that we have this area of pins. Right. So I'm going to clear the drawing. Right. So here we have. Right. So here basically we have one, two, three, four pins in horizontal arrangement, right? And also we have two pins in a vertical arrangement. That means here and here, here and here. It is indicated that this is enable pin, right? Maybe the name states that ENA pin. Here also we have ENA pin, right? So these are two things. I will explain what one by one what are those pins, right? So firstly, right? So if we are going to obtain these two pins only, right? So we are going to obtain these two pins only for the for consideration, right? So if we give power, so I'm going to increase the size of my pen, right? Clear all the drawings, right? So you have to consider this one, okay? Right. So if I obtain a pin and these four pins are connected to the Arduino, right? So that is why we are using Arduino here. So these 4 pins are connected to the Arduino, right? So here we have 2 pins, right? 2 terminals here. So we obtain a jumper wire here. So if I give the power, that means if I give the power, that means 5 voltage, and if I give 0 voltage to this terminal, right? That means I am sending the current to flow through this direction. Nay, I am giving the signal to flow through this one. That means the motor will be running clockwise. What motor? This motor or this motor? This motor, right? So if I give 5 voltage and 0 voltage from Arduino, so for 5 voltage and 0 voltage, I have to code it, right? So 5 voltage, if I give 5 voltage and ground terminal connected to this one, that means in 1 and in 2, right? So if you see that, you may see that if in 1 and in 2 is written on here, right? So if I give power 5 voltage here and the ground voltage here, that means the motor controller is activating this side of the pin and the motor will be rotating uh, one side. That means maybe a clockwise, right? So on the other hand, right? So on the other hand, suppose if I give the voltage not like that, but I'm deleting this one, I am giving the voltage to into 5 voltage, right? So that means this second pin I'm giving 5 voltage. For the first pin, I'm giving 0 voltage. What will happen? What will happen? Can anyone say it to me?
The motor will turn 94 plus.
Yeah, of course. That is the criteria, right? So the motor will be running counterclockwise, right? So hopefully you get an idea about how we can control the motor to run forward and backward, right? So do you understand that? If we give the power in this direction, that means the motor will be running clockwise. If we give the signal another direction, that means the motor will be running on the another side, right? So as same as, right, as same as we have connected for the left side of the motor, similarly we can connect the right side of the motor also, right? So I am deleting this one and explaining this one in 3 and in 4. If you see closer, this is written as in 3, that means input 3, input 4, right? So similarly, if you connect the positive 5 voltage to this one and ground, that means 0 voltage to this one, what will happen? The motor will be running clockwise, right? So similarly, if you change the direction of the current, the direction of the voltage that you are providing, what will happen? I'm giving 5 voltage to this one, that means info, and I'm giving 0 voltage to this one. That means the motor will be running counterclockwise, right? So what we have to do is, in order to work those two motors in forward direction, right? So you can see that here. So here I'm, so do you see me? Yeah. So here we have two motors, right? So in order to run this motor clockwise and this motor clockwise, that means uh, the 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 car will move in forward direction, right? So in order to move forward direction, how will you give the power to the motor control? Can anyone explain it to me? How will you give the power to the motor controller in order to run this forward direction? Yeah, you can answer me. Then only we can get more knowledge. Someone, basically what I do is, even for my university studies, basically the technique is called as Feynman technique, right? So Feynman, Sir Richard Feynman introduced a technique, right? So to study very smartly, right? So he told that if you teach to others in a simplified manner, that means whether he or she understands the subject very well, you can understand the subject very well, right? So that is what he told us, right? So if for that we have to teach for other people, right? So if you teach for other people, you can learn more, right? So that is why even when I was preparing for my exams, basically I will find my friends and teach them so that they may learn also. I also learn. So that is the way we can study smartly. Right? So that is why I'm asking you a question. If you explain it to me, that means you can understand more, right? So anyone explain it to me? How can we give the power to this one in order to run the motor in forward direction?
Give the connection, the first connection to the 5 voltage and the another connection to the 0 volt.
Yeah, for those, yeah, that is correct. Uh, what are the pins do we have to interact with? That means I'm asking you in
Pin
this.
1 and 2.
Yeah, no, but these are the pins in one, in two, in three, in four, right? So what are the pins that need to be given 5 voltage? What are the pins that need to be given 0 voltage? That is why I'm asking. That is what I'm asking. Yeah, tell me the answer. Whether it is wrong, we will discuss later.
Input 1 and input 4.
Input.
Input 1 and input 4.
So if you give that in that manner, that means the one motor will be rotating on clockwise and the another motor will be running on the counterclockwise, right? So what we have to do is we have to give the power 5 voltage to, right, in one, right, 5 voltage to in one and 5 voltage to in three, right? That means both the motors are working synchronously, right, in forward direction. So in 0 voltage, we have to give the 0 voltage to the second pin, that means into, and the 0 voltage to the fourth pin. Right? So these are the simple things. We can obtain the jumper wire and then we can easily connect these things. So if we give power to this like this, the motor will be synchronizingly running forward. So same way, in the same way, how can you power up, right? How can you give the signals to these motor controllers in order to run the motor in backward direction? Can anyone explain it to me? Just explain whether it is correct or not. We will discuss later. That is not a case because everyone is here to learn. So just answer me. How can you power up? How can you give the current to this in one, into in three, in four in order to run the motor in backward direction? Can anyone explain? No matter it is correct or not, no matter, just tell me the answer. No one, no intelligent people. Okay, I will explain it to you, but that is not the way we learn, right? So, okay, so what we have to do is in order to run the motor in backward direction, we have to change the direction of the current, right? So what we have to do is we have to give power, right? So we have to give power, right? So here we have to give power to into. So this is the way 1, 2. 3, 4, right? So these are the input terminals. We have to give the power in order to run this backward. This is very simple. We have to give 5 voltage to the second pin and the fourth pin, right? And 0 voltage to this one, 0 voltage to this one, right? So if we give like that, that means both the motors will be running in backward. It is very simple. So I'm asking you another question, right? So this I'm asking you another question, right? That means I'm giving in this way. Excuse me. I'm giving you in this way, right? So I'm giving 5 voltage to the first pin and the 5 voltage to the second pin. What will happen? What is the direction the motor will be rotating? Can anyone in 1 and in 2? I'm providing 5 voltages. What will happen? Can anyone? So what will happen? The 5 voltage pin, that means the 5 voltage signal will try to rotate the motor in clockwise direction, but then 5 voltage to the second pin will try to rotate the motor in counterclockwise direction, right? That means the motor is brake. That means we are applying the brake to the motor. I hope you know that when you are driving, what happen if you press the brake pedal? The tire will be stopped, right? So similarly, this is called as electrical brake, right? So in order to stop the motor, you have to provide a electrical brake. That means we press the brake, so then the motor will be stopped, right? So this is how we stop the motor. No matter if you don't provide voltages here, that means also the the motor is in brake condition, right? So hope you understand that one. So right. So another question I have to ask, right? So we have obtained this one. So just a minute. We have obtained Robo. Yeah, I have a question here. Yeah, who is this one? This person? I told you that we will start in upcoming classes, right? Wait until we get into those things. So this is the motor, right? So this is the thing that we are going to learn. So if you have this one, we know that how to operate this robot in forward direction and backward direction, right? So suppose the robot is going, that means the robot is going in forward direction, right? So suppose if the robot has to turn on left or right direction, what will, how will you connect? The robot has to turn on left or right direction. What will you do? How will you give the power? Right? So for that, this is very simple, right? So for that, so these are, let's say that these are the two motors, right? So motor one, right? So motor two. So turn off that one. Who is the person? Right. So what we have to do is, so what we'll have to do, what we will have to do in order to turn this motor in clockwise, sorry, in right direction, what we have to do. So this is the way, right? So in order to turn this motor in right direction, right? So that means we have to brake this motor. That means we have to apply a brake to the motor 2, and we still give power to the motor 1, right? So that means the motor, this means this motor is stopped, right? So this motor is moving. What will happen? The entire robo, that means the entire robo will be turning in right direction. Right? So that is how we navigate the robo in different direction, right? So do you understand these things? Did you understand this thing, or do you have any doubts regarding this? So for that, in order to turn this robo in right direction, right, in right direction, we have to give power to according to the pin, right? So that means we have to give power to the only in one pin, right? So that means this motor will be rotating only. This motor is still stopped. This motor will be rotating. That means the chassis will be rotating in right what direction, right? So that is how you control. So these things will be practiced if you practice these things, right? So this is very simple. So I can also show it to you. This is how it will work, right? So we have this one, right? So if the motor is this motor is stopped, but this motor is still running. That means what will happen? The tire wheel is rotating. So that means the chassis will rotate in this direction. This is how we can turn the motor to right direction. And also similarly, right, if you only give the power to the third pin, that means in 3, right, in 3 pin 5 voltage, we apply 5 voltage to the in 3 pin, what will happen? This motor will is stopped, and this motor will be rotating. That means the tire is rotating like this clockwise. That means the robo will turn in this direction. This is how we can connect these things, right? So, right. Another thing, we have two pins here, the vertical pin here, right? So these are some of the advanced things. So what you have to do is you have to jumper this one. So that means we have to short circuit this one, right? You have to connect this and this. That is why they have connected a cable here. So they have jumpered here. That means we call it as jumping, right? So this is the motor controller, right? So if you look closer, the this is the jumper terminal. I can remove it. So it is stopped. So I can show it another one. So we have two pins are jumpered together. So this is the jumper cable. So jumper pin, right? So this jumper pin, but inside the pin, these two pins are connected together. That means the short circuited, right? So so if we connect the jumper pin to this one, if you don't have this jumper pin, how will you connect? You have to obtain a male to male cable, right? So in jumper cable, uh, in this cable, this one is a male to male cable, right? So in order to connect the motor controller, you have to have female to female cable. So female to female cable, you can obtain it, and you can just short circuit this one. So why we use short circuiting? Why we do this one especially? Right? So we have to connect this pin and this pin together. So that is why uh, we have attached a jumper here and also here. Why this jumper pin? Why we use this one? Do you know anyone before? So probably you may not know knew about this thing because these things will be these things are new for you maybe, right? So why we use these pins is simple because this is the that means the entire. So this is the this is called as PWM pins, right? So that means we are controlling the speed of the motor, right? So if we jump this one to this one, that means we are giving the power to the motors 12 voltages. That means the motor, these two motors will be running at maximum speed. That is why we jumping this one. We have to connect this one and this one. If we connect like this, right? That means we are sending order to the motor to run at its maximum speed. Right? So that is why we jump these things. So here, just understand these things. We have to jump this one, right? So I will explain it later how we can control the speed of the motor as well, right? So on similarly, if we jump this one, these two pins, that means the right side of the motor will be running at its highest speed, right? So that means for that, according to the 12 voltage, the motor will be rotating, right? So that is all about the motor controller, right? So this is very simple. So these are the pins and all the things, right? Another thing, another important and interesting thing, right? So you have these are these things will become when you experience these things, right? So how will you interact with these things? So you have connected the motor. So you have prepared this one, right? So you have prepared this one. You attached this one, and also you attach this motor and this motor, and you have attached this motor as well, right? Also, you have connected, right? So these things. So little bit you have to little bit both these things, right? So if you are unable to both or don't know about how to both these things, you can give it to your higher person, right? So you can give it to your parents or other persons to both these two things. So if you can do this, you can do, but be careful about both things, right? So because the class students are grade 6 to 9, so these things you have to be aware about, right? So this is a little bit problem you may face. You have to both these two things. Right? So if you can't both, what can you do? Of course, you have to both. Right? So you have to both solder these things. You have to solder this one and connect this one to this one. And also here you have to connect this one and this one to the motor controller's other side. So that means you have connected these all these things. Right? So this is the stuff. Right? So after you have connected, you have to obtain your Arduino. Right? So you have to obtain your Arduino. So here I have the Arduino board, right? So after you have obtained this Arduino, what will you do? You can just connect by using this pin to your computer, and you can program this one, right? So after you have programmed, what will you do? You have to remove this wire and throw it away, right? So that then after the Arduino will stay here. Next, the Arduino will stay here, right? For the Arduino to work, you have to give power. Then only it will work, right? So for that, what can you do? In order to power up the Arduino, what can you do? I'm asking you a question. While you are programming the Arduino, you can give the power the Arduino from your laptop or your computer, right? So after you have programmed, you have to remove the cable because if you have connected the Arduino and the laptop, when the robot is moving, you have to bring your laptop with the robot, right? That is not the best practice. So what will you do? We have to throw the wire away. Yeah, answer. Sir, we can use the battery with the battery cable. Yeah, of course you can use, right? Of course you can use the battery cable and provide the Arduino. For that case, you have to connect those components, and for that case, you have to use a breadboard, right? So for that case, that particular case, you have to use a breadboard and obtain a battery, 12 voltage, and you can give 12 voltage to the motor controller, and also you can couple that, right? So you can obtain the positive terminal to connect V in terminal and the battery's negative terminal to the this one motor controller and the Arduino as well. So that means you can power up the Arduino. Of course, you can power up, but I have another way, right? So I have another way. So you can see that in here in your motor controller, if you look closely, right? So here we have logic voltage input. Sorry, basically the diagram is a little bit bad. I have to obtain another diagram. Basically, what we can do is we can obtain the power output from this one, right? So that the previous diagram, 5 voltage input, they say that is not the 5 voltage input, that is a 5 voltage output, right? So this is 5 voltage output. We can obtain 5 voltage from this motor controller. So that means it is very easy, right? So what we have to do is we have to obtain the positive terminal. This is 5 voltage. Obtain it and give the power to the Arduino V in pin. Will it work? No, we have to complete the circuit, right? So in order to complete, we have to insert another ground terminal and then we have to ground the Arduino as well. Then after the Arduino is powered up and if the code is correct, the motor will be running continuously, right? So if you give power or whatever the something, what will happen? The motor will be rotating according to your program. Right? So those programming and those things will be discussed in our upcoming lectures. Right? So here we have wired up these components. At least come up with the wiring and all the steps in the next class if you have. Right? So if you don't have these components, you can obtain this. Right? So you can obtain these components and you can practice these things. Right? So these are very interesting things. So when you are working or dealing with these components, that means that maybe you may face some difficulties. Right? So just obtain these components if you can, and then practice these things. That will be very easy. So if you don't have, just I will show you some more educational materials for you to learn while you are practicing in your home, right? So I will give you more. If you are interested, I will give you more. Right? More means I will give you more projects, more exercises, more examples, and all the stuff. You have to interact with me. Right? So that is the way. Right. Next thing, right. So after that, you have connected these things and you have connected the Arduino. Right. So how can you stick these components together? How can you stick? So I have used a two-way tape. Right. So I have one. So basically, currently I don't have the two-way tape. So you can use two-way tape. Right? So this is the two-way tape means you know that you can stick on one side and the other side. One side it is attached to the chassis, and the other side is attached to the motor controller. Right? So you can simply attach it here and remove it. Right? So that is why we use two-way tapes, easily removable component. So also, if you have a glue gun, right? So that means the glue gun, in order to stick these components together, you can also use the glue gun to stick these components, right? So Arduino and all this stuff, you can stick those things, right? So you can stick the Arduino like this, right? So what will you have to do? You have to wire those things, right? So you have to obtain in one, in two, in three, in four. The four terminals should be obtained and connected to the Arduino. So for Arduino, what pin do you have to connect? Maybe digital or analog or PWM pin. What is the pin you are going to connect? We are going to connect, these are signals, right? So these are not analog signals. But these are digital signals. If we give 5 voltage and 0, in between voltage, it is not necessary. Right? So you can simply say that we are using 5 voltage and 0. That means two values. Right? For the that means the higher value and the lower value. That means if we are using higher value and a lower value, we can simply connect the signal pin to our digital pin. Right? So that is how we can connect that one. So you can obtain this in one, in two, in three, in four pins to the Arduino board. Right? So what pin you can select randomly or as you wish, but it should be in digital form. Right? So that means I can connect in. I have Arduino Mega with myself. So if you have Arduino Uno, you can connect. So I am explaining here. So it may be so we have digital pins here, right? So we have digital pins here. So four pins we can connect, right? So whatever. But here we have two TX RX pins, right? So leave it this one. Leave these two pins and connect the other pin, right? So I have a reason for you to say that because these two pins, right? So in Arduino, these two pins, TX and RX pin, these pins are representing the communication ports. Right? So that means if we are using our mobile phone to control the robot, what will happen? So that is why we have to use these two pins. So that is why I am asking you to leave these two pins and you can connect the other pins. We we can obtain second pin to in one, third pin to in three, fourth pin to in one, in two, in three, and in four. You can connect. These are very simple things, right? So hope you understand these things, right? So this is the way you can connect those components and all the steps. So do you have any doubts regarding this? How to connect? How to interact with these things? Currently, I don't have the slides with me because some issues. I don't have the slides with me, but don't worry about the wiring diagrams and all the stuff. I will upload it to you. Sometimes it may take some time, but I will upload it to you as soon as possible. Right. So right. So do you have any problems regarding this? How to wire or how to connect these things? Of course, in this class, you are not going to ask because you may be shy to ask, right? So don't worry, you can just ask me questions. Right? But if you are dealing with these components, you will have to spend a lot of time to learn these things by practicing because uh, these things will be experienced in a different manner. Right? So that is the diagram. We have to. I can draw the board here, right? So I can explain the wiring diagram here. It's not a problem, right? So you can obtain a motor controller, right? So motor controller, you have two pins here and here, right? So you have to obtain this positive pin, right? And here you have to obtain another pin and connect here. On the other side of the motor controller, you can connect this and this. That means you have powered up the motor. That means you have connected the motors, right? So you have one, in two, in three, in four pins, and also we have this pin and this pin, this one and this one. So we have to short circuit this one. We have to connect these two things together, these two things together. That means the motors will be running at its maximum speed, right? So then we have to obtain the second pin and connect to in one, third pin and connect to in two, fourth pin connect to in three, fifth pin connected to in four, right? So this is how you wire. These are the simple things. So that I told you every lecture I told you when you are seeing these things for the first time, it may be confusing and little harder. Right? So if you practice these things in a regular way, that means these are the things will be very easy for you to understand. So just practice these things. You can learn a lot. So those are the things, right? So also we have to give power. Finally, right? We have to obtain a battery, 12 voltage, right? Positive here and negative here, right? So in the positive terminal, we have to connect it to the motor controller, and on the negative terminal, we have to connect on the negative as well. After that, we have to obtain the 5 voltage here, and then we have to connect it to the Arduino. That means V in pin. So the circuit for the Arduino powering up, the circuit is incomplete. In order to complete, we have to attach another cable, another jumper cable maybe, and connect it to the ground. That means the Arduino is powered up. But make sure that you remove the Arduino pin while you are programming. That is another case, right? So while you are inserting the USB cable, right? So while you are inserting the USB cable to the Arduino, make sure that you disconnect the power supply to the Arduino. If you That means you are giving more power. If you give more power to the Arduino, what will happen? The Arduino will be damaged, defected. Then after you can't use your Arduino, right? So for that, if you are connecting the USB terminal, USB cable to your computer, you have to disconnect the power and then you can code it. After you code it, what will happen? What will you do? You will disconnect this one and then you can power up. This is the way, right? So did you understand? So do you have any doubt here?
No, sir.
Any other one? Any other people? Person who has doubt? So can you do this? Can you make this at your home? So today, what we have learned so far is connecting the output terminal, right? So we have connected the outputs. This one is output and motor control is the controller, and this one is output and this one is the controller. This is That means we have partially completed the circuit. So of course, if we program the Arduino, right? So if we program the Arduino as a predetermined setup, that means it has to go for the 2 seconds. That means time, right? The robot has to go 2 seconds forward direction, 2 seconds right direction, 2 seconds backward direction, right? So that means the robot will move this direction, and backward direction. We can program like this, right? We can program like this, maybe whatever. It can go 3 seconds forward and 3 seconds backward, right? So you can program this for 3 seconds forward and 3 seconds leftward. So likewise, you can play, and also you can ask the robot to rotating like continuously. So these things you can control by program, right? So, but this is not the real case that we are going to build. Right? So we are going to build according to our requirement, right? So requirement means we have to connect the sensors as well, right? Sensor means we have to attach whatever the sensor that we uh, have to require, right? So that means, of course, you can if you are controlling the robot by using your Bluetooth or your mobile phone, you have to set up that one. Those things will be discussed in our future lectures. And if you want to control the robot according to a predetermined path. That means, let's say you stick a sticker, right? So you stick a sticker on your wall, sorry, on your floor, right? So like this. That means you obtain a black color tape and stick that on your floor, right? So then after you make this robot according to the wiring diagram, I explained today, you make the robot. And then you obtain the robot and place the robot here, right? What you need to do is you have to obtain the robot following this path, right? You have to make your robot, right? You have to make your robot follow this path, right? So what will you do? What are the things you will need? So let's think, because thinking is essential. Because let's think that there may be coronavirus uh, situations nowadays in our country and all over the world, right? So you can just think about a little circuit that the the robot, right? So this robot can provide food for them. So the corona patients are at the hospital, and then the robot is in outside, right? So we can give foods, right? So to these patients without going real person, you have to give foods for the patient, right? So what will you do? You can make this kind of robot, and you can make a path, right? So maybe the path may be different, and you can make a path, right? So then after you set up the robot, and you can do all the programming and all the things, and you can place the food, and then the robot will carry the food to the patient. After the patient is obtained the food, and then the robot can return. Likewise, you can create different kinds of things, right? That is why we are learning this course and these things, right? So we have to think uh, actual problems and solutions. So if you think like that, you may invent some new things, right? So if you are an inventor, right? So you may have different opportunities. Different opportunities mean you can participate in the robotic competition, maybe in your school level, maybe in university level, maybe in world level, right? So international levels also there are competitions, right? So even in Sri Lanka, they have a commission, Inventors Commission, Sri Lankan Inventors Commission. There are a lot of people and a lot of persons are guiding students and inventors towards the right path, and then they make inventors, right? So that is what I am also doing. I make inventors, right? So if you learn these things and think about the real problem and solve that one, that means you are getting knowledge and you will become an inventor or the scientist, right? So that is what I make students, right? So hopefully you have to think about those circuits and you have to invent something new, right? So right, of course, yeah, if you are interested in invention, those kinds of things, there may be in your school competition level, right? So that you can also participate, right? So maybe the robot carrying parts, and you can pick and place mechanisms. So those kinds of activities are available. Even you can obtain prizes as well, right? So in school level, there may be prizes around 50,000 or something else. If you get into the university as an undergraduate, there may be more, even priceless, uh, cashless prizes are as well. So you can grab more if you obtain more knowledge, there may be some opportunity, right? So there may be some exhibitions in your school or in your university period. So you can in the exhibitions you can invent these kinds of things and you can set those things and perform well, right? So hope you understand the lecture today and learn something new. If you have any doubts, you can clarify it to me even on the phone call. You can ask questions to me, right? So do you have any questions? Right. Today, if you don't have any questions, we will wind up the class, and tomorrow we will learn about the interesting stuff about how we can connect and interact with the sensors as well. Right? So we have only done the partial wiring. Right? So tomorrow we will learn about the sensors and wirings and also the programming. Right? So fine.